The folks at Byron Seeds believe organic requires a different perspective, plan, and approach. Organic isn't simply a different type of product or even a different way of farming. It's a different way of thinking, planning, commitment. It's a different philosophy on how to feed the world. Many won't understand, but the people at Byron Seeds do. We're owned by organic dairy farmers. We not only have the product, but we plan, manage, and execute organic. We speak your language, we share your struggles, and we laud your successes. Organic isn't a way of doing business, it's a community. We learn from each other. We're in this together. We'd be glad to talk cropping plans, management systems, the road to profitability. We understand what you're trying to do. We're farmers just like you. Visit us at byronseeds.net or give us a call at 800-801-3596. And thanks to Byron Seeds. You're listening to Rooted in Organic podcast. I'm Brian Wood, and today, along with Mike Klein, we are in Chehalis, Washington, sitting down with Jake Faye and Tina Sharp, who are with the Southwest Washingotn Growers Co-op, and we're sitting in their food hub warehouse. And wanted to hear a little bit about the story of the background of the cooperative and how you got started and what role it plays in Washington today. So thank you for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you guys to give a quick introduction and then get into the history.
Okay, thanks. So just brief introduction. The co-op has been in existence longer than Tina and I have been part of it, but it did get formed in 2019. We're a pretty tight staff right now. We've got 4 people that work here some of the time, not all the time. We've got a couple different business ventures, if you will, that we'll talk about a little bit. And that's kind of, where we are. I can dive into the history now if we want to go that direction a little bit. So the Pacific Northwest has seen significant population growth over the last 20 or 30 years. And we're here on a foggy, freezing late January morning today, but
I'm very aware, Jake.
Yeah, still lots of moisture in the air, but it's not raining. They say that starts again tomorrow, and we should have a couple inches of rainfall by the end of the week yet, which is more typical for us. But we have very beautiful summers, springs. The growing seasons here are nice. Everything is green, just like they've always told you. And that's drawn a lot of people to relocate to the Pacific Northwest over the last couple decades. And in doing so, we've seen a lot of development pressure on what is still very fertile ag land, but it's been developed. A lot of that happens in the Puget Sound region, and it kind of sprawls north and south along the I-5 corridor. Here in Chehalis, we are located halfway between Portland, Oregon and Seattle, Washington. Primary industries here, I would say, is the warehousing side of things because of our location. The largest sector historically has been the timber industry, and then we've had quite a bit of agriculture along with that as well. And just kind of with the shift in dynamics of what agriculture looks like across the country, acreage-wise, I'll just say we're small farms. A large farm in this part of the state's 500 or 600 acres probably. But we used to have a lot of dairies. It was very common for loggers to also own the dairy and have multiple jobs kind of thing, and the loggers back in the day, they were the land barons, and they bought up the tracts of lands that included the valleys, and then their farm was in the valley and they logged the hills. And so as time has changed, we've seen most of the dairies in the region go away. I think we have 2 or 3 left in the county that I would say are shipping milk on a regular basis. There are some smaller dairies, that are milking, making their own on-site type products, whether it's whole milk, cheeses, cheese curds, things of that nature. But the large-scale operations have shifted. There's not nearly as many as there once was. So that's made a big difference in what the dairy industry looks like. And then on the produce side of things, there have been numerous fresh vegetable processors in the area over the years. And the last two that were here did end up leaving around 2016, I think was the last one. And interestingly enough, they didn't cease processing or cold storage here in the Chehalis area, but they quit contracting in the area for those products. So they're still here. They employ a lot of people in our community, but they bring all of their products to process from Eastern Washington over here because of distribution ability. So as we saw a lot of those opportunities start to disappear, it was like, okay, now what do we do with this fertile farmland, And once again, we don't have large plateaus, we have valleys and watersheds, and every one of our valleys is surrounded by timber. So as an example, the valley I live in is probably 5 miles long and at the widest 2 or 3 miles wide. It's not huge. There are definitely 20-mile long valleys in the area that are also only 2 or 3 miles wide. Very fertile, but once you get out of that valley, you end up into the timber country real quick, and it's not really. Timber is an agriculture resource, but it's not. We're not farming it like we do with crops and stuff.
So when you're talking these valleys, or as soon as you get basically to the wood at the hillside, are they really steep then?
Not necessarily real steep. We've got a lot of rolling hills here in Southwest Washington. As an example, the highest peak that's not like in the Cascade Range or the Olympics here is in Southwest Washington. It's 3,110 feet. So it's not huge, but it does tower above everything else because essentially we're at sea level. And most of that timberland that is around the area is either state-owned timberland or privately owned timber companies. There are obviously some families that have a few hundred acres of timber here and there, but a lot of large timber companies do operate in the area.
And when would those timber companies have bought up all that land?
That's a great question. So my family actually homesteaded here just less than 10 miles outside of town in the 1860s.
Oh, wow.
And, when we go back to the family documents and the deeds and stuff for the property, they were getting sections at a time and homesteading. And then as the families grew, they kind of split the land that they had acquired, either at no cost or 50 cents an acre at the time. Wish we'd hung on to all that, today.
Yeah, no kidding.
But we still have probably, somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 acres that's still part of that original land. I'm not on it, but one of my brothers and my parents are. So, but I think a lot of that was people came early, and land was, very inexpensive. And the timber companies, I don't know when the Weyerhaeuser company started in the Pacific Northwest, but they've been here a very long time, and they own a lot of that ground, and they're good stewards of the land. It's just not land that we would farm for produce or livestock, things like that.
So, Tina, what is your role here at the Growers Cooperative?
Good. I am the manager of the Southwest Washington Food Hub, which is a pool within the Growers Cooperative.
Okay. And so to talk about the Food Hub a little bit, they bring the produce here, and then you package and distribute out of here?
So what we do is each week the member producers, this is a member-owned cooperative, they provide a fresh sheet by either updating their availability on our online,
You just call it our web-based platform, right?
On our online web-based platform, which includes our online store. Or they'll send me an email telling me what they have available for the coming week.
No, but then that food is gathered here and then distributed in boxes, or how is it? So what happens with the food once it gets here?
Okay, so it has to be ordered first. We either do it through Boxes, which is a subscription box program for Produce Box, or people like the school districts or local restaurants or local grocers will get on our online storefront and order. So each week I will send the producers what we call a pick list, which is a list of what we've ordered from them that week. And then they'll either drop it at the warehouse or we go and pick it up for them, bring it back to the warehouse. And then on Wednesdays, if it's for a subscription program or a repacking program for the boxes, we assemble the boxes and put the produce in there.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So without this as an option, without the food hub and the cooperative, would these growers have, what would be their ability to actually market their product? Would they be doing mostly like direct to consumer and trying to develop their own markets, and you're providing some of these better or bigger opportunities?
So the mission of the Growers Cooperative is to provide sales and marketing services for our members. As Tina mentioned, it's a farmer-owned cooperative. Our members elect a board of directors. The board of directors hires me, and we go from there, right? So most of our producers have done or currently still do the farmers markets, the roadside stands, things like that. Probably, Tina, you can correct me if I'm out here, but I would say probably somewhere around 70% of our vegetable producers have had their own CSA at some point. And as an example, if you haven't ran your own CSA and you're running it, you're probably trying to grow 20 different types of vegetables to put in there throughout the summer season to keep it going. And as what we've found is the food hub markets, sells the subscriptions to what we call a harvest box. And we've done it seasonally. We've done it through the spring, summer months, and fall. We don't have one right now, but one will be starting again real soon. But instead of one farm needing to grow all the contents, we can commingle from 10 or 15 different farms. So the point I was making there about they've all done the CSA and the farmers market and stuff like that, or the majority have, they've found it's a lot easier when we get together. Just last week, the producers for the food hub had what we call a production planning meeting. And, it's interesting to watch the conversation between the members of, last year I had wireworms in my potatoes. I don't want to do potatoes again. I'm willing to do some snow peas or something. And somebody else is like, I've had really good luck with the potatoes. I'll grow more potatoes and less of this. So the producers have the opportunity to, maybe grow the things they're more passionate about, that they enjoy growing, that their farm is more suited better for. And it takes a little bit of the burden off of them, I think, by having their neighbor or someone else, here in the region to commingle product with. And as Tina was mentioning, we receive the product, and then if it's going to a school district, we might not do anything. It might just roll back out of here in the same box it came in, but we're going to do that distribution of it, right? And it could be a school district wants 100 pounds of carrots, and we've got 4 producers that each have 25 pounds, So it doesn't always come from one producer. Sometimes it does. And then if we're going into things like the harvest boxes, or we've got some other subscription ones where, it could just be a total combination of different stuff from different producers. So I think that helps them out a little bit in their planning and stuff, because at the end of the day, my job, Tina's job, is to sell their product. We provide that sales and marketing service to our members.
We also help if we get a phone call from a producer saying, hey, I have a huge amount of delicata squash, for example, and it may be more than what was on the production plan, but then it gives us the opportunity to help offload that for them, to get that sold for them.
So when they had that planning meeting, do you have like the certain things that are really hot items, and like have kind of a roadmap of this is kind of what we'd like to have? Now it's up to you guys. Is this something you can do?
Yes, exactly. So Tina had a very thorough list, of what we had sold last year through some different channels, ones that we are pretty confident will come back again this year. So it's like, okay, we need a minimum of these types of things. And then, after the group talked about that, we moved into and this is the list of things that we didn't have that people wanted, who has the capacity to do some of this stuff. And, green beans was one that Tina brought up, and it's a difficult one to grow on the scale, the size of farm that we have. And I guess I'll back up a little bit. Our average vegetable producer, I would say, is somewhere between 2 and 20 acre size farm. They're not giant, and some of them, microgreens don't take up a lot of square footage, and we've got 3. Is that right, Tina? 3 microgreens producers. So these smaller operations, but when they're trying to figure out things like growing green beans that are labor intensive to harvest, there's no mechanical harvesters around here. Nobody's really interested in doing it. But we did have, was there one or two, Tina?
There ended up being two people,
Yeah.
or two farmers.
That said they would be interested in growing those fresh green beans for us this next year. So that's a huge win, because last year every time somebody asked, it's like, sorry, we don't have that, you know. They do well here. It just comes down to how do you get them out of the field, right?
And that production planning meeting is also a really great time to have member feedback, farmer feedback, to see, let us know what worked well, what may need some more work this year. So it's good communication with the farmers and the cooperative.
Yeah.
How many members are there?
Right now we have approximately 45 members and 11 non-member vendors.
Okay. So you get some products from non-members to add into your supply?
Yeah, like value added, or we even have gone through to do some, skincare products made out of beef tallow, so on and so forth.
Always locally sourced, small businesses is what we want to support with all that stuff. But yeah, I'm just trying to think of any other. So there's probably around 50 members of the co-op as a whole. Does that sound right? And then we're in the 40s on the food hub side.
And that's increasing.
Yeah, and that's increasing. And we've got some of our grain growers that are also growing produce. So there's a bit of overlap, for some of them. And then the number of members and non-members are also increasing. So pretty cool.
What does somebody have to do to be a member?
We keep it as simple as we can. So to join the co-op, that's step number one. And to join the co-op, there's a $100 common stock fee. And you pay that $100 one time, and you're now a member of the Southwest Washingotn Growers Co-operative. And then you can choose if you want to sell product through the Southwest Washingotn Food Hub. We charge a $250 annual, that's like a marketing fee, for us to carry your product on that web-based platform that Tina was talking about. So that has an annual fee. Currently, the way we're set up, if you're growing grain, which could be wheat, barley, peas, oats, canola, probably forgot something else in there. There is no annual fee for that. There's oftentimes, my job is to go out and find those contracts. So a lot of times we will hold like $10 off a ton off of a contract price for us to provide sales and marketing. So the two sides work a little bit differently, but the Food Hub does have an annual fee of $250 for us to sell product.
Now, would the grains all be food grade?
They sure could be. We used to grow a lot of sweet peas and corn for the local processors around here, and when that went away, the interesting thing was we had the land mass to continue growing those kind of things, but the way that it worked in the previous years, like the previous 60 years or whatever, the farmer would cultivate, sow, raise the crop. The vegetable processors provided all the agronomy support and then the harvesting as well. So when they pulled out, we were left with all these farms and nobody owned a combine. And, it's like you can only make so much hay and run so many cattle. So it did make it a little bit challenging. But the question was, are the grains food grade? And the answer is yes, most of the time. We were growing a lot of malting barley here a couple years ago. And that was a pretty good market. Unfortunately, that market has shifted a little bit, and we no longer have that opportunity. But a lot of the wheat that's grown here does go down to the Columbia River to various terminals that export it. The beauty of most all of your wheat, barley, oats, things like that, if you don't end up with an opportunity to sell it into a food market, it's always in a feed market, right? So you kind of hope for the food grade. If you don't get it, it can always go into a feed grade pretty easily. And one thing that we've experienced here, not every year, but I wouldn't say it's totally out of the question, is good grain ending up in feed grade based on our weather conditions in the late summer. So, it was, I think 3 years ago now, at my house, just less than 10 miles from here, I had over 2 inches of rain in the first week of August. That's not super exciting for standing barley that you've been warming the combine up to go start harvesting it. You end up with pre-sprout in those kernels, you know, and I can remember going down to numerous fields of our producers, you know, and you could literally see the green growth coming out of the heads of the barley. We've seen it with wheat. So there is always that potential here. We all know that. But, you know, the weather's also shifted a little bit. We're a little bit warmer than we were a couple decades ago. So that's lends us to a little bit better growing, you know, in the summertime for some of those dry grains than what it once was.
But you go to the store, and if you buy a sprouted barley or a sprouted wheat, there's a premium on it.
Right.
But when it sprouts in the field, you can't use it.
Yeah. And, you know, it's kind of the same thing when we had some of it that looked okay after we'd had that rain. And when we'd combine a sample and send them out, you know, we'd get the results back that 67% of it already shows, like, and they'd tell me, you know, when they do those samples that, you know, sometimes, you know, it's like literally 3 to 5 days of the germination has started inside of that kernel before you see it. So we're combining things that said, this looks great. And we send it to the lab and they're like, no, like 2/3 of this has already started the germination process. We can't make beer with that. It's like, okay. So most of it starts as food grade or has the ability to.
Well, I think pretty much wherever you go, the goal is food grade because of the premium on it.
Right.
And the cows tend to just eat the rest of it.
Correct. Yes, I'd say that's very accurate.
So like in the malted barley, you said, just using that as an example, you said the market has shifted on that. So I'm assuming you had some growers that were growing that variety of barley and had to suddenly shift. How do you keep an eye on those markets and then let them know, hey, we don't have an outlet for this anymore. Let's shift to this. Right.
Yeah. And that's a tough one, you know, especially with the grain markets. Once in a while you can get some sort of, I'd never call anything a guarantee because there's always, you know, clauses that could destroy the contract, whether it's weather, but a lot of it comes down to spot pricing. And, you know, when we kind of got in a pretty good rhythm with the malting barley where we knew we could kind of count on it. They were slow to generate contracts, but they would take everything we could grow. And the last fall, well, let's see, it was the last summer that we harvested for them. We'd gotten ready to plant some fall barley, and I'd brought in a semi-truckload of seed for our growers. I had everybody's acreage figured out, and the truck showed up. We unloaded it. I distributed seed. About 3 of probably 8 of us got our fields planted because like we were ready to roll. And within 48 hours, I got a call that said they weren't going to contract with us. And so we'd already bought the premium seed for that year. We'd put it in the dirt. We couldn't return it, and we owned it. And so that, you know, unfortunate situations because, you know, that hit everybody, you know, thousands of dollars on their bottom line because it was really just destined for feed at that point. But you don't have much control over it, you know, so.
Unfortunately, that's just agriculture, right?
it is 100%, you know, and we always joke about if you really want to gamble, get into farming, you know, because we're high stakes all the time. But yeah, that's a tough one, you know, because that variety of barley we were growing too was a protected variety. So we could only grow it and then its use had to be terminal. You know, we couldn't keep using it and growing more. So always kind of some strings attached. It was expensive seed. It was a specific variety for specific traits. We put out the extra money, the trucking. I'm trying to remember if that seed came from Idaho or Oregon. Had to be certified and everything, and then didn't.
And that was for a specific brewery.
It was for a specific malting company that supplies malted barley to a lot of breweries.
Okay, gotcha. And did they just discontinue that malt, or did they find somebody cheaper to grow it?
No, they had operations in Pocatello, Idaho, and in Vancouver, Washington, and they opted to direct some of their funds to expand the processing capabilities of Pocatello, Idaho, and not Vancouver, Washington. And so geographically, they opted to no longer contract this far west.
That was very well said. In a very nice way.
It's one of those things. They were a great partner for several years. It was good for our economy. It was great for our growers. Because of that, the Port of Chehalis is just finishing up some grain handling and storage facility just to the west of here, between here and the freeway. If you guys saw it on the way in, you might see it on the way out. But it was because we had that bottleneck, of where do we go with things, because there's been agriculture in this area for a long time, but when we were growing the sweet corn and fresh peas, we didn't harvest it and we didn't truck it. And so when we shifted to these small grains, we didn't have trucks to haul it, we didn't have combines, and so we've slowly kind of grown that business a little bit, but once again, we still had the bottleneck of, where do we go with it? And we didn't have rail access. Most of the farms around here, are running single or tandem axle dump truck style trucks. So having a place, that we can go with it, put it in bins, load rail cars, or, call for sets of hopper bottom doubles to take it to Portland or wherever on the river, that's our opportunity now. So we're excited about that.
Is any of the grain organic that you're working with?
None of the large contract stuff we are. Now, we do have one grower. He's a member of the grain pool and the food hub side of things. He sells a fair bit of produce and certified organic chicken through the food hub side of things. But he also combines, I don't know how many acres of grain. I don't think it's a whole lot. But he does market a lot of that stuff, not necessarily through the food hub on his grain. Now, I know that he was all excited. I spoke to him a couple weeks ago. He bought an oat roller. He's going to start rolling his own oats, and he wants to see us sell those through the hub. And we're excited to sell it because, whether it's dry beans or any of those type of crops, that can be combined, we're really excited to see that.
So the organic interest is mostly on the produce side.
It really is, yeah. The organic produce, I don't know if our dairy that we receive through the food hub is organic or not. And it's always an interesting conversation. There's definitely, no one would ever question, the value in farming practices, sustainable soil health, that kind of stuff. I do find, I've had the conversation with several producers that, aren't always interested in paying for a label. And, we've, here in the Pacific Northwest, people are very interested in, local type products, and telling stories. And yes, organic labeling kind of always puts that on the product. I mean, because everybody knows, well, if it says Organic Valley on it, obviously they went through the steps. But sometimes, it's more of a story about local, where it was, and here's our agriculture practices, and not always just that label. So I would say, on the large crop side, there's definitely more use of, whatever tools, herbicides, pesticides, but there's still also, the use of cover cropping, reduced irrigation. Everybody's interested in soil health. So there's a lot. I would say the Pacific Northwest is very progressive in a lot of those farming practices, but not everybody's always on board with, pursuing a certification.
Yeah, especially, we've had quite a few people on, on that smaller scale where that extra charge just, it doesn't have the value that, when you're looking at dairy or more so in a commercial sale type setting.
Sure.
But when you're marketing a group of people's practices, that's I guess one of my questions would be, you have some that may be certified, some that may be doing or organic practices, some that, regenerative, sustainable. There's a lot of different words out there for it now. But how do you tell that story, or are you primarily focusing on, local and sustaining Southwest Washington agriculture is the main focus?
Right. Definitely a large emphasis on local, the miles from the farm to the consumer type thing. As Tina was, I don't know if she came out and said it, like point blank earlier, but when she was talking about the produce, when it comes into the warehouse, a typical scenario would be we get let's say that you're signed up to receive a weekly box from us, and you've got till 3 o'clock on Thursday to customize your selection for next week. And then on Friday, Tina pushes out what all those orders are to our producers. And the producers have Saturday, Sunday, and Monday to get harvested. And Tuesday, all the product shows up here. And Wednesday, it gets repacked if it needs to. And it's all gone either Thursday or Friday. And this warehouse is totally empty once again on Monday, and it's kind of clean up. So it's a very short turnaround, and freshness, I guess.
Sure.
That product quality is something that we really emphasize. But the part around our agriculture practices, it's a story that I would say the co-op hasn't told well historically. It's a conversation that we've been talking about quite a bit over the last 6 months, maybe even a year. We're investing in some modernization of our website, featuring Farmers Weekly, getting some more just education. You hate to say you want to educate people, but honestly, they don't know what they don't know. And when I tell people here in the community, a couple years ago we were growing 2,000 to 3,000 acres of malting barley, their eyes get big and they say, where? And it's like, well, if you never get out of the town, if you never drive the back roads that end up being dead ends at some point, you don't see the farms that are tucked up in all those valleys where that happens. So yeah, there's a good opportunity. I think, we've done a good job so far of talking about local, and making that a big part of our branding strategy, which we're working on that now as well. But we need to tell more about the story, the families, the practices, and what they are and why.
And it's not just local. I mean, of course it's local, but it's supporting local businesses with our drop sites for our subscription boxes and whatnot to increase the footprint there and to increase the knowledge of what we have. For example, I lived in Thurston County starting in 1976. I didn't know until 2021 how many farms we have here. And it's my goal to get that information out there.
Mm-hmm.
School districts are buying from us, buying healthier foods for the school districts and whatnot with all that too.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. And I think what you mentioned about telling the story, like that is Brian and I's mission and our goal here with the podcast, is to share that story from that farm that has never had an opportunity to share their story.
Right.
Yeah, and that's also the beauty and the burden of being a cooperative, and where, I think of small versus large. Everybody's got a little bit different definition, so it's hard to tell that story. And then same thing with practices. Everybody does it a little bit differently on their farm. So if you're promoting one, then everybody's got to do it. But that's not how you want everybody to do it. It's both a pro and a con.
Yeah, and I think, there's a couple things, everybody always reminds me, my farm is different than your farm, even though they're 2 miles away, or whatever, based on our valleys and the watersheds around here. Like, it's amazing how different the soil type can be, even a mile or two away. And, I've got a weather station at my place, and at my parents' place it's less than 5 miles away, and sometimes they beat me by a 1/4 inch of water in a rainstorm, and sometimes I beat them by a 1/4 inch, or it's 5 degrees difference on a morning like today, and it's like, how's that possible? It's just right there.
Mm-hmm.
But we learn a lot from each other in those conversations, about what did you guys see at your place last week, or what do you find when you do this? So I think the learning opportunity kind of, the once upon a time, like the Granges were a big thing, and that's where everybody got together to talk about things and figure things out. And nowadays that doesn't happen as much as it used to, right? And so I think through the cooperative, and it takes a lot of orchestrating by Tina and myself, to initiate conversations. And sometimes, the conversation doesn't happen directly between the producers because we're stuck in the middle of it, but we're sharing that information on their behalf, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're calling them and saying, hey, so-and-so's got this going on, or last year, one of our grain growers had aphids in his canola. They'd spotted some, and, none of our fields were within several miles of each other, but we all knew, right, that so-and-so had seen this, go walk your fields. And so we do work together a lot, and I think support the region, that's our goal.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So were you a member of the cooperative before you started working here, or are you working at the cooperative and also a member, or just tell me more about that?
Yeah, so I grew up here in the area. My parents had a small cow-calf operation. They both had day jobs as well. I initially went to college to become an equipment mechanic because I was tired of things never working on the farm. So I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do in life, but I want to figure this out. Fast forward, I worked in the heavy equipment, logging industry, working on equipment. I spent over a decade in higher education, teaching some of those classes, and then administration. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, I decided, I was ready to go back to doing some ag stuff. And did a little bit of stuff with the co-op there for a while, and then I came on here full-time as a general manager almost a year ago. A little interim, worked with them before that, but yes, I'm also a member of the co-op. I do grow grain, hay, beef, pork, or pigs, so a little bit of everything, but I think it really gives me a good perspective as well as to, what our members need, what they're looking for, what challenges they're facing. Because I've faced most of them myself, at some point down the road.
Now, does the cooperative market meat products as well?
We do, yeah. Okay. And so that's kind of been, I think I mentioned it earlier, but the co-op started in 2019, like December 2019 is when it was formed. And then it was in the spring of 20 that they decided to pursue the food hub. Because initially it was kind of the larger commodity growers wanted the place to ship grain. Like, let's figure out how to grow grain together. And then the vegetable producers came and said, well, hey, kind of don't forget about us. We want to be a part of this. And so the food hub came on within 6 months in the beginning, and just trying to figure out, what that looked like, how did it scale up. So that was 2020 when the food hub came on. Fresh produce was, the idea. And then, we've moved into value-added things, which could be anything from locally made salsa, jams. There's been pickles and sauerkraut. And then the meat side of it, has been like, okay, this is the next one we want to conquer. How do we do it? The freezer that we have here in the warehouse, we've had just over 6 months now. So that, obviously with the meat, we needed freezer space. So that's been a big shift for us. We really only have a couple of larger customers that have bought meat through us. We haven't done it like we do the CSA style box yet. Everybody's got this vision of a ranch box, or what that looks like. And we're still trying to figure that out, how we could do that. And we would like to, definitely feature some stuff. A lot of our beef in the area is grass raised, grass finished, we grow a lot of grass here. You get 45, 50 inches of rain a year, and a couple months where your soil temps are in the upper 50s and 85-degree days. You grow a lot of grass, and so we can put a lot of weight on cattle from like April through usually mid-end of July. It starts to dry out if you don't have irrigation, and then even if you've got good grass, if it's so hot out, the animals, they still gain, but not 2.5, 3 pounds a day. They drop back to 1 pound a day. So there's a good opportunity to sell and market those meat products here. I will say we haven't done it well yet. It's kind of on our bucket list, or I shouldn't say bucket list, but like our checklist for 26 is to start selling more of that, and really the way our storefront, our web-based storefront works, right now you can go in and see that you're getting, let's just say kale, carrots, and lettuce in your vegetable box this week, and you're like, I've had enough kale, I can't do it anymore, and you want to add more lettuce, you have the ability to do that. But a lot of times you also have the ability to say, oh, well, it looks like they've got 10 cucumbers on hand. I could take one of those, and then there's 9, and somebody else can pick them. So you can customize your box. And I think that's really where we'll be with the meat products. It won't be you've got to buy an 18 count of T-bones, but you could say, hey, I just want a 2-pack of T-bones, a 2-pack of pork chops, some bacon and ground beef, kind of thing. And maybe you only get something from us once a month or once every 3 months, depending on what you want to do. The convenience factor right now is for our box sales is you go online, you sign up, you pay with a credit card. We receive payment, and then I turn around and I make the checks out, the producer payments. So the producer, really all they have to worry about is making sure we get an invoice and then I get them a check. Everything else goes through the web-based stuff. And I think the meat could operate very similar.
And that is a subscription-based? Or
on the vegetables?
Yeah,
the vegetables are that way. But we do. So we've got, I'll call it our retail market, and that's subscription based for the boxes. And generally, people sign up and they stick with it through, sometimes it's a 15-week season, sometimes it's a 10-week season, because we break things up a little bit throughout the year. But it's not unheard of. Funny story, at least I think it's funny. Back in November, we had people who were getting their boxes, and somebody had checked a box that said they wanted an additional case of leeks. And so we're down here at the warehouse packing things, and we're like, this customer says they want a case of leeks. Like, somebody clicked the wrong button, right? And so Tina followed up with the customer and said, hey, we're just putting things together. I see that you have maybe mistakenly ordered a case of leeks. And the gentleman was like, no, I want my case of leeks. I'm going to shred them and dry them, and then I make soups and stuff all winter long. So it's one of those where it's definitely customizable. You're not locked into whatever's that week. But we've seen the same thing, with people have family coming to town, and so they'll literally for that week they'll order an additional second box, or they'll say, I want just another box full of corn because we're going to have people over and have corn. So we give a lot of flexibility, I guess, in those subscriptions. Your question initially, are they subscriptions? Yes, they are, but they're customizable throughout the year. And so if I see there's peaches and I don't want just 4 peaches, I want 10 peaches, it'll tell me, okay, you've added these other things, it's going to cost you another, call it $5.27, and your card will be billed automatically, and you just say, yeah, I want it, and then you get them. So the customizable part's pretty cool, and I think it's probably one of our bigger selling features. I mean, the customer is in control a little bit, and if there was something they got last time that they really enjoyed and they see it's there again, and sometimes the example I used on the cucumbers, the farmer only had 10 left, and so we didn't put them out in all 300 boxes, but we can still list on there that there's 10 available, and the first 10 people that say they want one, or if 5 people say they want 2, they're all gone that quick. But those add-ons exist, and that's fruit, vegetables, hazelnuts, things like that. We do sell that way.
But for the customer that is ordering this, the ease of that is paramount to making this thing work.
Yeah.
If there's only 10 available, like you click on it and then it shows 8 available.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
And if you're the consumer or customer, that's just okay with whatever you get. Like, we've got people that never go in, they never see what's offered next week, they never adjust anything, they just take whatever their box is that shows up. So it's from, the ones that want no interaction, they just want some produce, to the ones that really want to customize and get certain things.
How far a reach? You said we're between Seattle and Portland. How far are you having pickups?
So like from producers, right?
Both. Customers and producers.
Sure. So I haven't put the miles on the map, but we really serve here Lewis County, Pacific, Grays Harbor, Thurston County, Mason, Pierce. Trying to think if there's anybody else that we've dealt with, but you're probably within a 50-mile radius. Okay. We've got some producers that are a little bit farther away. Here in Southwest Washington, we have warmer summers than we used to, a little bit drier, but we still haven't perfected growing things like peaches and cherries and things like that. So we do work with another farmer-owned cooperative that's in eastern Washington, where they have those hot days, and we get a lot of our fruit from them. They're probably the exception. I'm sure they've got to be 150 miles away. Other than that, everybody's pretty close. And our distribution area is not as big as our producer network by any means. Sure. So we sell probably 90% of our product between Lewis and Thurston County. Yeah, it's the bulk of it, and here in Lewis County, population-wise, we don't have any big cities, very rural living. You get up north to the capital city, up around Olympia, there's a lot denser population. So without a doubt, that is people who probably don't have as direct access to this type of stuff, so they're more inclined to buy it as where people here in the more rural area may drive by the farm stand on their way home or know their neighbor's got a farm stand. If you live in the city, you don't really get that opportunity. So we do sell a lot of our customized boxes that direction.
You said you haven't had much luck with peaches and cherries and those types of fruit growing. Do you have any items or growers in the area that they've grown something that you've looked at? I didn't know that could be grown here in Southwest Washington.
yeah, we've been surprised a few times.
Oranges.
Yeah.
What?
Oranges.
Oranges?
Yes.
Yeah, we had a producer who has grown oranges in their greenhouse, and they went out in a box like a year or two ago, right? Yeah.
2 years in a row.
Yeah. So definitely not common. They weren't quite as sweet probably as if, they'd had the heat units that they get in Florida or California, but it worked. Some other interesting things, a kiwi berry. I had to ask what it was when one of our producers said, they could supply us with kiwi berries. I said, somebody enlighten me. I know what a kiwi fruit is. I'm not familiar with a kiwi berry.
Can you please explain what a kiwi berry is? Because I've never heard of it.
Tina, go ahead. You want to, you almost got to draw a picture of it, right?
Yeah.
But it's really, it tastes a lot like a kiwi fruit. It's about a third of the size probably. And with the exception of kind of like a coarse fibrous stem on one end, you just eat the whole darn thing.
I've seen them before. I've had them before. I
Really?
saw them in the supermarket and just, this looks kind of cool, and picked them up.
Yeah.
And they were actually very good.
I was really impressed this year when we got them because our one producer said, yeah, I can do this. And I was like, that sounds cool. I don't know what it is.
Right.
But so that stuff does happen, a little bit. We've had one producer that's had a little bit of success with melons. Typically in this part of the country, you don't grow melons in Western Washington. It just doesn't get hot enough for cantaloupe and watermelon. But we've got one who he intentionally went after a south-facing slope on his farm where he had irrigation and sandier soils. Put a lot of effort into it. But he has sold watermelon through us. So definitely different. You wouldn't expect someone in this area to be producing watermelon.
So going back to the kiwi berry, is that, I'm intrigued. Tina just showed me pictures of it. Is that pretty big scale that he's doing, or is it a couple of bushes or whatever trees they are?
She's one of our newer producers, so I don't know how many trees she has, but they're pretty popular. She has enough they're in constant demand, and she provided enough for 650 boxes in one sitting for us, and still had some more. So they're like miniature kiwis, as you can see.
And they come to us, in like, I don't know, probably like a 4x4 clamshell, that's 2 inches tall. Provided like 600 of those to us one week, and it was like, okay, this is cool. So we do see some different things sometimes that we weren't really expecting.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
they wouldn't have that room for innovation probably if they were just shipping to a packer or anything like that.
And it's one of those, where let's say that and this is actually, I think what happened was they sent us like 600 one week and they went out, and then the next week there weren't as many, so it was like an add-on for one of the boxes, and people were like, oh, I learned about that last week, it was good, so there might have only been 50 the next week, but they were sold instantly because people learned about them the week before. And it's like you said, my kids ate mine before I got home kind of thing. And it's like, okay, what are these things and how's it work?
And it was a selling point for the farm, actually, as they were calling me, telling me they may be interested in becoming a member. They wanted to know what their likelihood of selling some things were. So I offered to put some kiwi berries on as an add-on for them to see what the demand would be. And they sold out when I put them on as add-ons, and I think I only put 50 clamshells on as add-ons, and they sold out, and people were asking for more.
I just think the small-scale produce grower is always going to be looking for that niche in that market, because with only, let's say, 5 acres, you've got to maximize the income per acre, and it's got to be something that can't be mechanically harvested on a large scale.
Right.
or it will be done and you can't compete.
Yeah, they were definitely popular.
That's probably the most interesting one I can think of off the top of my head.
Because really, they're mini grape-sized kiwis. It looks like.
Well, now I'm going to have to try to find some and try them.
You'll have to try to find some local ones, because I've tasted from out of the grocery store kiwi berries. I didn't think I liked kiwi berries, and I made myself try it when this grower brought hers in, and I was a fan from there.
Okay. Well, would you, as we're just wrapping this up, I want to give you an opportunity. You know, if somebody listens to this and wants to have more information about the Food Hub or, you know, the Grower Cooperative, what do they do? How do they reach out to you?
Right. So probably the easiest thing to do is we do have a website. And as I mentioned earlier, our website's getting rebuilt a little bit. And so, you know, the Southwest Washingotn Growers Cooperative, there's a couple pieces to it. You know, on the grain side of things, we don't really rely on like branding, you know, for people to know that we're growing barley or wheat. The Food Hub's totally different, right? Because we need people to know that we exist, that they can get this stuff local, they can get it to their house. So our website is www.swafoodhub.com. So that's for the Southwest Washington foodhub.com. And as we rebrand it, you'll see a little more information on there about the Growers Co-op as a whole, which will include a little bit about the grain side of things. But there's contact information for how to get in touch with us. There's membership applications on there. And, you know, it's really one of our big goals in 26 is to create a little more awareness, you know, not just of we've got these things for sale, but opportunities for producers. Tina mentioned earlier that our membership has grown quite a bit. I would almost go as far as saying it's doubled in the last 18 months.
More than doubled.
So it's really growing fast. You know, it used to be where we would look at maybe a new producer every 4 to 6 months, and now it's not uncommon for us to look at 2 to 4 new producers a month. I mean, that's been pretty consistent for like the last year. So there's been months obviously where we don't have any to look at, or we choose not to take recommendations to the board just because of the season or whatever else is on the agenda to bring in new members. But it's really cool. It's grown a lot, and we've distributed a lot of product in 25. I hope 26, you know, we keep growing on that and make regional agriculture economical and sustainable.
Well, Tina and Jake, thank you so much for joining us. This was really interesting. I'm always encouraged when I hear, you know, you get to a new region and you hear that people are focusing on local small-scale agriculture to promote it and get it out there. So thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for visiting us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.